Hello, I'm Kenny Leet, instructor for physical sciences here at Broome Community College, and you're listening to my Cloudcast, a podcast designed to help students understand all the different types of clouds we have. This Cloudcast will cover the 4 major cloud groups and their types, and a few special clouds that we find related to some of these cloud groups. The 4 major cloud groups are high clouds, middle clouds, low clouds, and clouds with vertical development. These are clouds that we can find from the surface all the way up through the troposphere. Okay, let's begin by talking about our high clouds. And the first high cloud is cirrus. Cirrus is a thin, wispy cloud that forms in the upper part of the troposphere, tropopause. In fact, all of our high clouds form in this area, in the upper parts of the troposphere. And because of that, because this area is very cold, they're all composed of ice crystals. So in the word cirrus, we have a C and an I right at the beginning, which can help remind us that these are high clouds formed from ice. This plain cirrus clouds are very thin and delicate, wispy type clouds, and you might have heard them described in elementary school as horses' manes or mare's tails, right? The tail of a horse. Very nice day, bright blue sky, bright white clouds. They might indicate a change in the weather is coming, but for that day, it's going to be a very nice day. Another type of high cloud that we have is cirrostratus. In the cirrostratus type cloud, you may not even notice that there's a cloud in the sky, but if you look closely, you'll notice that the sky isn't as bright blue as it would be if there were no clouds in the sky. Cirrostratus tends to blanket the entire sky. Anytime we talk about stratus, we're going to talk about covering the sky or being straight across the sky. So this gives a veil on the sky is a good way to describe it. The ice crystals in the atmosphere can also cause some optical phenomenon. And one of the most famous things that cirrostratus causes is a halo around the sun or the moon. And here in the Binghamton area, we frequently see these halos around the sun and the moon, although in many other places, these halos are quite rare. Okay, so next time, if you notice that milky wash to the sky on a sunny day, cover the sun with your hand so that you don't hurt your eyes, and then see if you can see a halo around the sun, or even the moon. Oftentimes in a full moon, if you have some high clouds in the atmosphere, you can see a nice halo around the moon. Our last type of high cloud is the cirrocumulus cloud. Cirrocumulus clouds, again, are high ice crystal clouds, but these clouds, instead of being thin and wispy or covering the entire sky, form in globs or clusters, and we'll see that with anytime we see the cumulus in the word. These globs or clusters are very small because the cloud is so high in the sky. And oftentimes these small clusters actually will tend to look like scales of a fish. So this sky is often called the mackerel sky, mackerel of course being a fish. So it's the fish scales. If you don't see the fish scales, however, you can recognize the sky by noticing that the globs of cumulus clouds form in these rows or waves and lines in the sky. So they tend to have this pattern to them that we can associate with the cirrocumulus clouds. Again, with these types of clouds, we're looking at bright white clouds and a nice blue sky. So again, a nice day expected when we have cirrocumulus type clouds. Our next set of clouds are the middle clouds, and these might be the hardest to identify from just a picture or an image, but out in the field it can be a little bit easier. The first type of middle cloud that we have is altocumulus. Altocumulus are white to gray clouds, and you'll see individual globs or clusters of those sheetback or really fluffy white clouds that we often see anytime we have a cumulus cloud. Now, how we would distinguish altocumulus from cirrocumulus if we were outside would be by extending our arm all the way out and then looking at an individual glob or cluster, and if that glob or cluster was about the size of our fist, right, we would say that that would be altocumulus. If the globs are smaller than our fist, or even smaller than if we extended 2 fingers out at the end of our hand, then that would definitely be a cirrocumulus, or a very high ice crystal cloud. So we can use that to assess how high up those cumulus clouds are, because it can be difficult to tell the difference. Our next alto cloud, or middle level cloud, is altostratus. And altostratus I lovingly refer to as the Binghamton cloud. This cloud, stratus, we said, is straight. It covers the sky. And when this cloud is in the sky, it's kind of a dark, dreary day. But the real pain is that you can see the sun through the cloud. It's not a low cloud, so you can usually see a bright spot in the sky where the sun would be, but it's just not a bright sunny day. Little gray on the grayer side, or maybe a real pale blue. So I kind of find this day to be kind of depressing because, you know, you can tell that the sun's out there, but it's just not going to shine through that straight layer of altostratus clouds. The next set of clouds are our low clouds. And the first type of low cloud is a stratus cloud. A stratus cloud may resemble fog, but it won't be on the ground. Remember, fog is simply defined as a cloud on the ground. So a stratus cloud is a straight cloud that may appear to be fog, but it's fog that has lifted somewhat. So if you look at the image of stratus in your textbook, or the one that's being shown, you can see that from the perspective of someone in the valley, this is a stratus cloud. The cloud is above their head, so it's not a fog. However, if you were at the top of one of those hills, you might see this as fog, as the cloud would still be on the ground and not yet lifted. Okay, so stratus is basically fog that has lifted. The next type is stratocumulus. Stratocumulus is kind of a mixture between a stratus cloud, which would be straight and uniform, and a cumulus cloud, which would be white and puffy. And stratocumulus look like white, puffy cumulus clouds that have been kind of torn apart a little bit. So they don't have nice flat bases like we typically see with cumulus clouds. They might have an irregular base or an irregular glob or cluster. Sometimes, too, stratocumulus won't look as bright white as cumulus clouds would otherwise look. Our last low cloud is nimbostratus. The prefix nimbo, or nimbo something in the word, tells us that the cloud involves precipitation. Nimbostratus type clouds are large, steady rain-producing clouds. The clouds cover the entire sky, very dark, dreary day. You probably don't see any separation between the horizon and the cloud because it is raining. And this type of cloud we see with, again, steady precipitation that falls for a long period of time. Our last set of clouds are clouds of vertical development. And although they're the last set with just 2 major kinds, we're going to find a lot of different variations in these types of clouds because of their vertical growth and development. So they can change and adapt, and we're going to talk about some of the ways that these clouds do that. But the 2 major types of clouds of vertical development are cumulus and cumulonimbus. So let's begin with cumulus. Cumulus is a nice puffy white cloud. You think of a nice day usually, bright blue sky, bright white cloud, very flat bases. And we have a few Latin words we can use to describe cumulus clouds. The first word is humulus. And when I think of this word, I think of humor or happy. This is a fair weather cloud. You'll notice that the height of the cloud is shorter than the cloud is wide. This tells us that there's not much vertical growth today, which means the atmosphere is quite stable. So the day is going to stay nice. You wouldn't expect afternoon thunderstorms or something on a day that had these nice flat cumulus type clouds. The next type of cloud of vertical development that we find is cumulonimbus. And cumulonimbus, again, has that nimbus word in it, so we associate that with precipitation. And a cumulus cloud can grow into this giant cumulonimbus cloud. Cumulonimbus clouds are thunderstorm clouds. They're very large clouds. They extend through most of the troposphere into the tropopause, and sometimes even punch up into the stratosphere a little bit, which we'll talk about in just a minute. A few things that you should notice as you look at these clouds is, one, you should be able to see a band of precipitation, especially on the image shown now. And that precipitation band you can tell because as you look at the horizon, you don't see much of a separation between here, the water, and the cloud. That would be the region of the thunderstorm where rain is actually falling. And unlike our nimbostratus cloud, which had steady precipitation, cumulonimbus clouds, very showery precipitation. If you think of a thunderstorm, that intermittent type of precipitation, heavy at times, and very short-lived. That's the type of precipitation we expect with cumulonimbus type clouds. Cumulonimbus type clouds can also get this shape, a classic shape, which we call the anvil shape, or in Latin, incus. So cumulonimbus incus is an anvil-shaped cumulonimbus cloud. Another Latin term we can use to describe cumulus clouds is congestus. Congestus is when the cumulus cloud is starting to grow or pile up and expand. It could be congesting up, so we could have growth in the cloud in the vertical. That would mean a taller cloud height than the cloud base. Or you could have many cumulus clouds accumulating together, congesting together. When you see this happening, you know the atmosphere is unstable, and there's a good likelihood for those afternoon, what we call pop-up thunderstorms. Some other fun clouds that we have, and some of the Latin words we can use to describe them. This one is lenticular. Lenticular looks like a lens, hence the name len in the word lenticular. Some people also call this the UFO cloud because when they form near mountains, and they tend to just hover or hang in one spot, which looks kind of eerie if you ever see it in person instead of just a still photograph. And in fact, if some of the first UFO sightings were in a region of the United States that sees many of these lenticular type clouds. At the top of cumulus clouds, especially cumulus clouds that are growing, we'll sometimes see a cap or a straight, smooth cloud, and we call this pileus, or cap cloud. Another fun cloud is the mammatus cloud. The mammatus cloud is actually part of a bigger cumulonimbus cloud, and this cloud forms in the region of the thunderstorm where we have downward air motions. So it's almost, imagine if you could take a cumulus cloud and flip it upside down. And that's what gives us this mammatus cloud, downward motion. So we're seeing kind of that top billowy part of a cumulus cloud, but it would be underneath a cloud. The mammatus are given their names because people think they look like cow's udders. And they generally form in a clear part of the storm. So if you're seeing mammatus clouds, although they're quite odd and unusual and maybe a little frightening looking, you're generally in a safer part of the storm. And it could be a very strong storm, maybe producing a tornado, but generally this area is a rain-free and better area to be in. Another type of cloud that we have is contrails. Contrails are actually man-made clouds, and they weren't around before aircraft. The word contrail is short for condensation trail, and they form as the exhaust from aircraft engines. The engines actually emit water droplets into the upper atmosphere. So as the plane flies through the upper atmosphere, the droplets freeze to form ice crystals in an artificial cloud. Before aircraft, you wouldn't see any of these contrails. And here in Binghamton, we actually see a lot of contrails. We're actually underneath one of the major east-west flight patterns. So we get a lot of high clouds that form due to these contrails, which means we rarely see a day with a bright blue sky and not a cloud in the sky, except shortly after September 11th, when all the aircraft were grounded. It was really amazing to look up into the sky and to see just that bright blue sky without a contrail or any type of cloud. Another interesting thing with contrails is we can use the length of the trail to tell what the weather's going to do. The longer a contrail lasts, so the more it spreads out or the longer the line is in the sky, that tells us that a change in the weather is coming. A frontal system is coming, so we should expect some changes. If the contrails disappear quickly as the plane is flying, that tells us that the air is relatively stable and conditions should persist at least for the next day or so. Once you see those contrails really starting to stay in the atmosphere and make long lines in the sky, that tells you that something's going to change. There'll be a change in the weather coming. Pyrocumulus, I think, is just a fun cloud. This is a fire cloud. It's not the smoke from the fire, but as the smoke from the fire adds more particles to the atmosphere, more condensation, nuclei, more water vapor can then condense out of the atmosphere onto these particles. And these particles actually attract that water vapor to form clouds. So we can get clouds that form as a result of a forest fire. Now, the sad thing with these clouds is often they can grow and develop into a thunderstorm, but because they were formed with not much water vapor, they don't have a high moisture content. So these types of clouds might actually trigger new lightning strikes, which might trigger new fires, but very little precipitation to actually put out a fire. And finally, any day you look at the sky, it will probably not be just one type of cloud. You'll probably have a mixed sky and be able to identify several different cloud types. Well, I hope you enjoyed this Cloudcast podcast. And remember, keep your eye on the sky.